Hello everyone, and welcome to another video by me, Tarot by Andy. I hope you are all having a wonderful day so far. This week, as I was thinking about what episode to release, I had an original plan, which has been moved for next week's video. This week I realized that on April 30th and May 1st is Beltane, which is one of the Sabbats of the Wheel of the Year. And I decided that this time would be a perfect time to answer a question that, again, Maria has asked. So thank you again, Maria, for your question. And so this week we will be talking about the Fae, who they are, and how you can work with them, and how I personally work with them. So I hope you enjoyed this video. So first we're going to address who are the Fae. Well, the word fairy is Latin. It is fatum, which means fate. So because of this, some people believe that it is the fairies who determine our future. So depending on how our parents and ancestors treated them, that's how their children treat them. It's kind of equivalent to the Christian version of original sin. You know, how our ancestors sinned, and then so our children are born with sin. But it takes a less blamey stance, and just more like we're punishing the parents through the children. So that is one perspective of the Fae. The Fae are descendants from the Tuat de Danann, and this is This is translated roughly into people of the goddess Danu. So according to legend, these people excelled in science, magic, and civilization. But the Tuat de Danann were not gods or goddesses or fairy people themselves. They were a druidic race with rare insight into the workings of nature. So the story goes that when the Milesians arrived, there was a horrific war between them and the Danann. And so when the Danann were eventually overthrown by the invading Milesians, and the Milesians are now known as the Gales, by the way, it is said that a bargain was struck in good faith once the warring stopped. But the Milesians were cunning, and they offered to split the lands of Ireland if they were allowed to stake their claim first. So they would live peacefully. The Milesians would get one half, and the Tuatha De Danann would get another half, and that's it. But when the Danann agreed, they were given the land below, and the Milesians were given the land above. So the Tuatha De Danann were forced to actually depart beyond the mortal world through the Cid. I think I pronounced that right. So they were forced to live out of sight, and eventually they took the form of fairies, and they continue to pop up every once in a while, sometimes to help us and sometimes to hinder. I will put all my resources and references that I use throughout this video will be in the description below, so that you could take a look at these stories yourselves as well. Maybe you'll look for more stories, and yeah. So because of this story, many believe that the fairies were actually the ones who taught witches magic and their craft. And that is very interesting, honestly, because the perspective is these fairies are actually amoral beings. So they don't really care about us. They don't really care about the human race. They only really care about their own needs and pleasures. So if you are to work with the Fae, you must always leave an offering. You must leave some sort of kind of bribe. Otherwise, it will either backfire on you or they won't do it at all. So my personal belief is that eventually the Fae do grow to care for you, but this takes years of dedication and perseverance. They don't love you overnight. They need to grow that kind of attachment, and you need to work with like a specific Fae closely for years and years. So you can't just work with the Fae as a whole, otherwise they don't really have the chance to grow that bond with you. So the purpose of the Fae is to rectify situations and restore order. So they're really great with justice, hexes, any sort of way that you believe you want to restore balance, the Fae may be the ones for you. However, a warning is that the Fae are common, kind of like thieves, but sometimes they steal from you to take a message, to send a message. So I'm going to tell a quick story. Once, the Fae, I have a rune set, okay? And once I noticed that I was missing one of the runes. I thought I sometimes make spell bundles for myself to carry around in a bag, and I thought I left it in one of those, but I searched, I looked everywhere, I looked in the bag with all my runes and could not find it. It turns out that the Fae actually stole it. So I looked everywhere, I looked in jacket pockets, and eventually in one of my jacket pockets I found a bag with small crystals that I was gifted by someone, and I didn't even realize I lost them. But I found them and I was like, yay! I have so many crystals that it's hard to keep track, and sometimes I don't realize that I lose them or misplace them. Then I decided to look at my bag of runes one more time. So this was about like the 7th time that I looked for them, and I found the missing rune. So I believe personally it was the Fae who stole from me in order to push me to find that crystal, because I could have used it's a useful crystal for what I was going through in that moment. So yeah, that is a story of how the Fae may steal from you to send a message. So the next section I kind of have for you is a list of other of books on the Fae that I used also throughout this video, but generally to work with the Fae and learn about them. Skye Alexander is amazing. Her books on the Fae are so insightful, they're well researched, they're put together, organized well. I have so much good things to say about Skye Alexander. So 2 of her books, which I will also put the names of in the link below. So the first one is The Modern Witchcraft Guide to Fairies, your complete guide to the magic of the Fae. Then the second one is Fairies, the Myths, Legends, and Lore. So depending on what you're interested in, if you're interested in spell work and magic, the first book is for you. If you're interested in learning about the history, types of Fae, cultural differences on the Fae, the second book is for you. So these books also go into more detail about what I discussed in this video. So if there's anything you're confused about, I highly recommend you check them out. And they go in depth on rituals you can do with the Fae for different aspects of your life, like money, abundance, love, personal and professional development, spiritual development, all sorts of magic. Now we are going to talk about the types of Fae out there. The first type is nature fairies, which is a broad type. These are fairies that guard the natural world. They implant wisdom into our crystals, our gemstones, and they tend to be solitary. So these Fae keep to themselves a lot. They're kind of like secluded, but they will work with earth-honoring witches and ecologically minded people. The next type of Fae is the Fairies of the Fate. These are also called birth spirits. So at the beginning of this video, I said that people believe that the fairies control our fate based on how our parents treated them. So these are the fairies that do so. They control the fate of people and nations. And in different mythologies, they are represented differently. In Norse mythology, we have the Norns, which are the past, present, and future personified. The Greek, we have the Moirae, Clotho, Lachesis, and Athropos, which are the 3 sisters of destiny. The Egyptians have the 7 Hathors, which are the 7 sisters of fate. And the Celtic have the Fairy Queen and Fairy King. So some individuals, to protect their child, they actually celebrate these fairies with a feast at the birth of the child. The next type of fae is called trooping fairies. These travel in long, elaborate processions in the countryside, and they ride either on a horseback or on chariots. These are sociable and fun-loving, and if you are a party animal, these are the fae for you. They live in castles on hilltops or under sacred lakes, and they dress like royals. Sometimes they play pranks on people, but generally these are harmless pranks and they love interacting with others. So if you are a beginner who wants to connect with the Fae, highly recommend these fairies just to say hi, get to know them, and because they're relatively, compared to the other Fae, harmless. The next one we have is the Seelie Court. So the nature fairies are kind of like the broad ones. So they could be nature fairies that are in the Seelie Court. But the Seelie Court is a group of fae that are benevolent, happy, blessed, and fortunate. They help humans that are generous and rewarding. And they're called fairies of the Summer Court. They do not mean any harm. And if any harm happens through them, it is unintentional and they will find a way to make up for you. The next fae are leprechauns. You have heard of them. You have seen them on cereal boxes like Lucky Charms, commercials, pot of gold at the end of rainbow. But this is not all they are. Number one, it comes with a little warning, is they are tricksters. They will find loopholes in contracts and deals you make with them and find a way to steal all your abundance. So you have to watch out for that. But just like common stereotype beliefs, they do bring prosperity and abundance, but you must give them part of the reward. So if you have a paycheck, leave a couple of dollars of the paycheck for them. If your abundance is in trying to think of other forms of abundance. Magic, you have to give them some of your magic power, a spell, a candle, whatever. You have to give them part of that. The next is brownies. No, not the dessert. I bet you guys have probably, if you know the brownies, you've heard that joke before. So I'm sorry if that was cringy. Brownies are household fairies. They clean up your home. They're short, modest, hardworking. If you leave an offering, they may give you motivation to clean your room because through their assistance. So maybe indirect like that, but they will find a way for you to get your chores done. However, again, a warning, they will wreck your home if you offend them. If you back out on a deal with them, if you harm them, if you insult them, they will do the opposite, destroy your home, and you'll have much more cleaning to do than you started with. So that's just a warning for you. If you hear mysterious noises in your home at night, chances are it's from the brownies. The next one is grogoshes. These are half fairy, part human, and they are solitary fairies that also do chores for those that they like. However, you should reward them with fresh cream. I don't know if this is common sense, but not the cream you put on your skin or face or whatever. It's the creamer you put in your coffee or tea. So you reward them with a little cup or bowl of that, and they will be happy. The next one is Bean Sid. You may not have heard of this, but you may have because they are also known as banshees, washer at the stream. This Bean Sid is Gaelic for fairy woman, and these are fairies that prophesize your death with a high-pitched wail. However, you may see that as threatening, but they're not the ones that actually cause your death. They're the ones that if you're going to die, they show up. Kind of like the Grim Reaper. He doesn't kill you, but he takes your soul to the afterlife. This is what the banshees do. So they appear to those who are to die soon, and they're called fairy hospice workers. So they help those who are about to pass away, and they can help you communicate with past loved ones. I recently lost a friend, and I plan to, I plan to work with the Bean Sid to communicate with her. So next are the elemental fairies. These are the 4 elements: earth, air, water, and fire. So let's go into detail of each quickly. The earth fairies are Mother Earth's caretakers. They are in charge of caring for crops, plants, animals, etc., etc. They provide energy and magic to gemstones, crystals, botanicals, so similar to the nature fairies. And they practice herbal medicine, so you can call upon them to help work with herbal magic, to infuse your herbs with magic, etc., etc. Examples of these spirits: pixies, sprites, gnomes, dryads, forest fairies, mountain fairies, and elves. The next are the air fairies. These guide winds and clean air, and they protect and direct flying animals or insects like birds, bats, ladybugs, butterflies. They are winged fairies. You gotta need that to fly in the air. And they're good for communication, affirmation, and incantations. The next are the water fairies. They regulate the tides, they direct the flows of rivers and streams, they're the ones that bring rains, and they protect aquatic life. Again, this fairy, as all the fairies, they have a warning. Some can be quite malevolent, and if a nation, a city, even an individual causes them harm or insults them, they will cause storms. And so some believe maybe they caused sinking or missing ships. But yeah, so the examples of water fairies are undines, nymphs, merrows, sprites, and mermaids. Finally, fire fairies live in volcanoes, deserts, fireplaces, campfires, candle flames, sunbeams, lightning, and anywhere else where there's a strong source of fire or heat. They burn the dreadwood for new growth. So those dead, the trees that you burn and then new trees come up, that's what they do. And they look like lizards. So an example would be salamanders. Connected to this, because salamanders are an animal, so there are also animal fairies. So this can be any animal with a magical attribute. Most of them are cats, black dogs, or horses, but they may be other animals. And your familiar may actually be an animal fairy. You never know, right? Like some fairies kind of deviate from the norm and are actually curious and want to know humans more, and so they live with them, and that's who your familiar may be. You never know. And then finally, there are Spriggans, who are the fairy police. If you piss off any fae, they are the ones who met out the punishments to humans who displease the fairies. The next section we're dealing with is still types of fairies, but these are the ones that you need to beware. You should not work with these as a beginner of the Fae. Again, if you are a beginner and you have never interacted with the Fae before, do not begin your Fae journey with the following fairies. It is possible to eventually work with these ones, but you need to be extremely cautious. Look at your contracts, the fine print, read between the lines, make sure there's no loopholes, do your research, do not go back on your promises. So if you say, I promise to leave you an offering every Friday, but you have a doctor's appointment out of town on that Friday, you're a little bit screwed unless you let them know, hey, can I give it to you on Thursday instead? They may be happy to have an offering one day earlier anyways. But regardless, they require bribes. These are selfish fairies. They're quote unquote evil in the sense. The first one, solitary fairies. They can be any one of the types that I listed above, and these are individual individual fairies who reside alone. They have zero interest in human affairs. And the book that I got this information from says to do not approach them, as they will trick you and you will get lost in fairyland. Many of these are nature fairies, but not all, so they dress in rustic clothing or stay naked. The next one, we talked about the Seelie court, so now we're going to talk about the unseelie court. The malevolent court of fairies. They torment people, they make them ill, they kill them. They're fairies of the winter court. If you practice baneful magic, these are the fae for you. But again, beware, all baneful magic must have strong protection. Do not do baneful magic without proper protection. And that includes protection from the unseelie court, because they may turn it back against you, or they may do a worse spell against you. Remember, these are the original magic workers. They are the original quote unquote witches. They know way more magic than you will learn in this lifetime. And they know things that you do not know, including how to break down your wards. Be careful. The next one is Corrigans. They lure men in and entice them to drink their magical water. And in that sense, the men become their property. They abduct babies as their own. And they are female fairies who can help with sex magic. But again, be cautious. Do your research. They should not be the first fairies that you work with. The next one is Dullahans. This is a terrifying figure. Similar to the Bean Cid, they show up when you're about to die, but they are thought to be the ones that actually take your life. They are the harbinger of death. They're not prophesizing your death. They are causing the death. They are the bringers of death. And this description is going to sound familiar. So pay attention and think in your head, what character in modern media is this based on? The Dullahans carry their own dismembered heads, and they ride a shadowy horse with flaming nostrils. If you guessed the Headless Horseman, right on. The Headless Horseman is a character based on Dullahans. Fairly accurate as well, because most of the time Headless Horseman is a harbinger of death, a bringer in evil, and things people should be aware of. Honestly, out of all the fae, I feel like the Dullahans were the most accurately portrayed in media. If you see a Dullahan, draw the curtains closed and cover your ears, or play some protection magic. Pray if you're a ChristoPagan or a Christian and you believe in the Fae and you see the Dullahan, start to pray, open your Bible, get some holy water. Most of the times, Fae in general are kind of, they back away from holy symbols, images, books, anything that has been blessed or is deemed holy, like crosses. They have a tendency to be avoidant of those. So if you bring out the big guns, the holy water, the Bible, prayers, chances are you will scare the Dullahan away. The next one is Pukas. These are mischievous shapeshifters who shift into animals. They damage your crops, they scare your livestock, they vandalize property. And unlike most Fae, they do this without you. It's not them turning their back on you. They do this before you even work with them. They just show up to your farm one day and do that. Especially if your farms are damaging to the environment, like overuse of pesticides. If you're planting poisonous plants to poison someone. Or poison animals. If you have poisonous plants that will kill the wildlife around, the Fae will show up. They will not be happy with that. And so these are Fae that do that without you interacting with them first. So to get them to stop, you must bribe them and try to convince them to protect your property with the bribes. Finally, goblins. They're the most harmless honestly out of this list, but I put them here because again, this is a list of fae that you should not be working with as a beginner, unless you do heavy research. So goblins tend to vandalize, trash the place, and harass humans. Even if you bribe them, they typically don't care for bribes. So it's very difficult to work with these because they're stubborn. They're kind of like the Fae depiction of antisocial personality disorder now that I think about it. Like, it's just their personality. They don't care for bribes. They just like to trash the place and vandalize and live their life. There are many more fairies out there than the list above, which is surprising because this was a pretty exhaustive list. My suggestions would be, depending on the country you live in, or the state, or the province, to research fairies in your area and see what fairies are there and how you can work with them, and just get to know the fairies in your area and leave them an offering. Even if you don't want to work with them, just leave them an offering and thank them. Don't say thank you. Sorry. Don't say thank you to the fairies. That's in the do's and don'ts list, actually. You should not be thanking them. But say, I appreciate you, and give them an appreciation offering. So what happens if you work with the good fae, but you want to protect yourself from unwanted fae? Here's a short list, not at all exhaustive, but they're kind of like beginner, easy stuff that you could do to protect yourself from unwanted fae. You could place an iron like horseshoe or iron nail or anything made of iron at your window or doorways. Sprinkle salt. Have a magical protection amulet. Tell them nicely to go away. And have your deities get rid of them if you work with deities. At the end of the day, deities are way more powerful than the fae, and they will get rid of them. Now let's discuss the do's and don'ts of working with the fae. The do's: you can leave offerings like milk, beer, fruit, so on and so forth. Leave gifts for them, like shiny objects, your crystals, your broken jewelry, etc., etc. You can respect them. Common sense, I guess. You can offer to trade something with them if they stole something from you that you don't want them to have. Offer to trade something just as valuable. Chances are they will accept. And then do set boundaries. Verbally tell them where in your room or house they can and cannot go, and they will respect that as long as you leave offerings in the places where they can go. So if you have a specific fae altar like I do, and you want the fae to only go to that altar for their offerings, for the crystal, I have crystals all over my room. Only the crystals on my fae altar I will allow them to take at their pleasure. So I be sure to tell them, you can go on this altar, but you can go all over the room, but please only take things from this altar. And they do respect that. Unless, of course, it's to send a message, in which case they usually return what they stole as soon as their message is heard. So that's a different topic, I guess. The don'ts: do not chase them. Do not trap them. Do not do elaborate displays of gratitude like, oh, I worship you, Faye. Like, kind of like obsess over them, or like talk to them every day. Like anything that they deem elaborate. It's individual to each fae depending on if they interact with humans or not. Trooping fairies, they typically like humans, so you could talk to them every day and they don't care. Every day is a party day with them. But so depending on the fae, research what they would deem elaborate displays of gratitude. But worshiping them, that's a big no-no. The fae don't want to be worshipped. Like, most of them don't care about humans anyways. They only do things for gifts. They do not want to be worshipped. Do not say thank you, like I almost did at the beginning of the video. You could say, I appreciate you. Find little loopholes. You can say, here's an offering for you. End of story. Or you could say, like, here's an offering because you helped me with my spell. That's not saying thank you. I never understood why they don't like thank yous, but what I heard is if you say thank you, they'll try to take you to fairyland where you'll be lost forever. But I'm not 100% sure how accurate that is. But the point is, don't say thank you. Don't even try. Don't say thanks, shukran, merci, thank you in any language of the book. Don't say it. Do not. Do not play harsh sounding music like screamo or heavy metal. The Fae do not like that. You may like that, but the Fae do not. They like soft music. They like calm music. Soft rock you could do. Some forms of rock music you can play for them. Pop, as long as it's like not too like screamo, I guess. So yeah, pop music generally isn't. Boy band music, K-pop's probably good. But yeah, anything that's harsh sounding, very dissonant. If you're a musical theorist, you understand what dissonant means, like ugly sounding. Do not play for them. And finally, the big do not accept gifts from the Fae. That is a trap. That is how they're going to take you to fairyland. You will get lost. You will be kidnapped. Do not do it. Okay? Okay. Please, we don't want you to be kidnapped. We like having you on Earthland. Please, stay on Earth for me. Thank you. So, now, this is a long ass video. I'm out of breath. I'm going to pause for a second. And I have returned. So, what can you do to work with the Fae? So, like I said, the reason for this video is because Beltane is coming. Similar to Samhain, Beltane is known as a time when the veil thins. However, instead of the veil between the life and afterlife, Beltane signifies the thinning of the veil between the human world and fairyland. So this is an excellent time to work with the Fae, to make your first connection with them, because your messages are almost guaranteed to get through. When you first want to start your practice with the Fae, a suggestion I give to you is to write a note to the fairies, the types of fairies that you want to work with, and leave it with an offering. It bonus points if you place it on an altar that is made especially for them. Again, not mandatory, but that's kind of just like bonus points. So you get like 101% instead of 100% kind of thing. And a suggestion is to include Norse runes in the letter because that is their language. So if you write it in English and then put Norse runes that signify what you want, it will be easier for them to understand, and they would appreciate that, honestly. Another suggestion I give to you to work with them is to plant a garden or indoor plants. Leave food outside for them and the wild animals. However, do not leave wine outside unattended. I feel like that's common sense, but you never know with the people who are out there. Do not do it. Do not. That is harmful for animals to drink. That is harmful if a child wanders in your yard for whatever reason and drinks out of it. I don't know why they would do that, but you never know with children putting random things in your mouth. Do not leave wine unattended. Do not leave food outside that is harmful to animals. So like chocolate, I know that's harmful to dogs. Wild dogs and wild cats cannot have chocolate, so don't leave chocolate brownies outside or cake. Leave like fruits, vegetables, water, juice. What else? That's all I could think of. But leave healthy stuff. You gotta have some healthy stuff in your fridge. Leave some of that outside. And then pull some tarot or oracle cards with them. That's a good way to connect with them as well and get messages with them or from them. And a big one is to spend time in nature. Take a walk in the park. Don't say, oh, I'm gonna ride my car around the national park. No. Do not ride your car. The Fae would be much more appreciative if you walked, save the earth, # no pollution. Yes. And then connecting to that to protect the earth, recycle, pick up trash you see outside, be environmentally friendly, don't leave the water running when you're brushing your teeth, don't take long showers. I have a problem with long showers. I need to work on it. Stuff like that. And then another thing to do is to invite the trooping fairies to celebrate with you. If you have a party, a graduation party, a birthday party, whatever, invite the trooping fairies. Give some wine if you are of legal age and you can get access to wine. Play music, dance, celebrate, have fun. And then there are also rituals with elemental fairies that you could do. So depending on the element that you are working with, call upon the elemental fae and ask them for your assistance in your spell. If you're doing candle magic, call upon the fire fairies, water magic, the water fairies, etc., etc. Do it. When going to the beach, you can leave an offering for the water fairies. Maybe you have some seashells you can leave there. Fruits, like I said, the same thing, fruits, vegetables, any kind of stuff like that. And you can also do a spell, like a jar spell, and when you're making the gel, turn in a particular direction, so north, east, south, or west, depending on the element you are working with. If you are working with the air fairies, turn to the east, as they are spirits of communication. If you are working with the water fairies, turn to the west, as they are spirits of imagination. If you are working with the fire fairies, turn to the south, as they are spirits of inspiration. And if you are working with earth fairies, turn to the north, as they are spirits of manifestation. So, how do I work with the fae? The first thing is I have an altar dedicated to them. It's like it's not in the most ideal spot. It's on top of like my computer desk where I do my schoolwork, but it works as long as I keep that particular space clean and non-cluttered. It's fine. I also have offerings which I leave on their altar or around their altar. These usually include shiny objects like broken jewelry, broken rosaries. Again, they don't like the cross, so when I say broken rosaries, I mean like the rosaries that like lost the cross, because the cross tends to fall off all the time, and then it just becomes kind of like a pretty pearl necklace. So I give that to them. Crystals. I also give them plants, so I have my 2 cacti. Plural, I caught it. I have my 2 cacti on my fae desk as kind of like an offering, but also as a way to ask them to please help them grow healthy. I have herbs like palm, bay leaves, especially depending on what I want to manifest. I have candles. I have statues of fae. So I have one of a gnome and one of a pixie. My tip for you is don't just get the traditionally beautiful fae statues. Fae come in all sorts of shapes, sizes, appearances. Not all of them look like societally beautiful. Some are actually quite scary looking, quote unquote ugly, according to society. I'm not calling them ugly, but society would call them ugly. And so I would suggest getting fae statues of those ones as well, just to give an accurate portrayal. The fae really hate it when statues, all the statues on their altars, or like statues in general and landscaping and stuff, are like the traditionally beautiful ones. They really want more accurate depictions. I also have animal statues. I have birds, butterflies. I have cats. I have a duck crystal. I have a turtle crystal. I like all sorts. And personally, I think that butterflies are like fae that have been like reincarnated or will become reincarnated as fae in their next life. I just think, I don't know. To me, I feel really connected to butterflies, and it was my connection with butterflies that inspired me to work with the fae. Or, you never know, maybe the butterfly is an animal fairy, right? Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Those nuances will not affect how I work with the fae, so I don't really tend to think about it. But the point is, animals are strongly connected to the fae. I also do divination readings. I pull oracle cards with them. I have the affirmations of the fairy cats deck that I use for affirmations, for working with the fae. And I also use tarot cards with them. I use my Revelations Tarot by Zach Wong. That's just my preference. I don't know. I like the colors and the imagery. I feel like the Fae would like it as well. And then I connected to this earlier, like alluded to it, but I asked the Fae to bless my plants, help them grow, and in return, they are allowed to help themselves to anything on my Fae altar. So again, that give and take, the offering. Hey, if you do this for me, I give you this. Some Fae even live in my plants, which is really cool. The final thing I want to touch on before I head off for today is how do the Fae fit into my ChristoPagan beliefs? So Christians typically either do not believe in Fae or believe that the Fae were sent by the devil. Don't ask me why. There's no, the word fairy or Fae doesn't appear in the Bible. I don't know why. They assume that. But that's what they believe. I believe that the Fae were created by the gods, same as all beings on earth. And I believe that air fairies can send our messages to heaven. So while angels bring messages from heaven to earth, the air fairies can send the messages from earth to heaven. That's my personal belief. However, the big one is, since the Fae are not 100% angelic, personally, I believe they are half angel, half demon. They still have free will because of that demon side. So they only send the messages that they believe they are fairly compensated for. So like, just like you have to pay to get an airplane ticket, or you have to pay to get a train ticket, or you have to pay for gas for your car, you need to compensate the fairies to send these messages to make the trip. So their offerings have to be deemed good enough. So not just like any small offering. It has to be equivalent to the importance of the message. And just like kind of like their traveling time. You know, earth to heaven is not always a quick trip, especially for a being that is half demon. You know, but yeah. So be sure of that. And apparently what I discovered is my belief that Fae are kind of like angels on earth, where they can send messages to God for us. Apparently, as I was doing research, it is similar to the beliefs that Doreen Virtue referenced in her book Fairies 101 in 2007. I say it's interesting because now, after making so many tarot decks and everything, she is completely against New Age spirituality. She apologizes to evangelicals for encouraging this quote-unquote demonic practice. But it was interesting to see that someone shared this belief with me, even if it was only temporary for them. It made me glad because, you know, like, even though she doesn't believe in it now, she did at one point. So at least I know my beliefs somewhat make sense if it's in a book, right? And then there's this little quote that I have. And then again, all my references will be below so you can find the website that I got this from. In centuries past, belief in the existence of fairies and elves was common among both adults and children. The belief is still strong in some places. In Iceland, for example, about half of the residents believe in elf-like beings known as the Huldufolk, which are translated as hidden people. Or at least they don't rule out their existence. According to author D.L. Ashliman, in the book Folk and Fairy Tales, a handbook, Eve was embarrassed that her children were dirty when God came to visit, so she hid them away and lied about their existence. God knew of her deceitfulness and proclaimed, "What man hides from God, God will hide from man." These children then became the hidden folk of Iceland, who often make their homes in large rocks. So that is very interesting that there is like a folklore mythology on the existence of Fae in like the Bible, like Eve, like having the Fae be Eve's children is very interesting because like if demons are Lilith's children, I feel like having something half angelic, half demon be Eve's children is very, very interesting to me. And what this actually tells me is that Eve would actually a tuath de Danann. Technically, if you believe in this, Eve was a practitioner of magic. She connected to nature. And yeah, so like honestly, it was very surprising to read this, and I'm going to read more. I'm not saying that I believe in this 100%, because I just discovered this as I was doing my research for this video. I just found it, but it is something I'm going to be looking into more, and maybe I will eventually believe in it 100%. Who knows? And a final point, fairies have been promoted in recent decades into a force for good. They have a role in assisting us with our moral and or spiritual development. They are not evil like Christians may lead you to believe. They are not 100% demons. They're not 100% angels. If anything, they're kind of like us. Like, we're not perfect. We're not 100% good, and we're not 100% bad. Not that demons are bad, but the metaphoric overlap. And yeah, so it's interesting to see that even though the Fae don't care about human affairs, we could see a lot of us in the Fae. And so yeah. So that is the end of this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. Give it a like, comment, subscribe. Blessed be everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful day, week, month, and year.